Welcome friends, it is Sunday morning, so we're going to do another one of our Depression-era pre-World War II recipes from the Elmvale Community Cookbook. And this was printed in 1939. And today's recipe is a little bit special because it signals the start of a separate series that we're going to do on the channel all about butter tarts. And I realize that 9 years ago we did a butter tart recipe video, and we said on that one we were going to do a series exploring the butter tart, the history, and all of the different variations. And then for some reason we didn't follow through. Well, we're going to do it, and we're going to start today. So today's butter tart recipe is courtesy of Mrs. George A. Johnston, and it starts out with brown sugar. Butter tarts are they're a uniquely Canadian thing. They're actually probably uniquely Ontario. You don't see them a lot in Western Canada, or at least in the past you didn't see them a lot in Western Canada. This is something that is pretty much Ontario and maybe a little bit into the Maritimes. And it is essentially derived from a bunch of different recipes that would have been brought to Canada over the years. One of the most obvious is tarte au sucre, which is a Quebecois pie that is just sugar pie, essentially is what the translation is, sugar pie. And it kind of looks a little bit like a Bakewell tart, except it's not a Bakewell tart, and it kind of looks a little bit like pecan pie, but it's not pecan pie. And it's one of those recipes that everyone has a favorite. Everyone knows what is best. And so there are many, many variations. There's variations on what kind of sugar you use. There's variations on whether there's milk or cream in them. This one has cream. There are variations on how many eggs you use. There are variations on whether you like it gooey and runny or whether you like a firm texture in the middle. There are variations on whether it has currants or raisins or walnuts. And people are absolutely adamant that their way is the only way. And I'm pretty much like that too. I mean, I won't turn down a butter tart if someone hands me one that isn't quite the way that I like it, but you know, if I'm making them at home, I want them the way that I want them. And I got to tell you, Mrs. George Johnston, this is not the way I would make a butter tart, but I'm going to give it a try because I want to try the recipe. You always have to try new things. So as far as sugar goes, this one uses brown sugar. The first known written recipe of a butter tart, called a butter tart, used white sugar. I see a lot of recipes that use maple syrup. I see a lot of recipes that use corn syrup, either light corn syrup or dark corn syrup. Raisins, currants. The options are endless. Everyone's right and everyone's wrong. Now, this calls for seedless raisins. Put those in, and chopped walnuts. Put those in as well, and we'll just mix them. Here is the next thing. I think everybody agrees the pastry has to be handmade. It has to be handmade, has to be hand-formed. If you're buying a butter tart in a what looks like a machine-made pastry casing, no. Everyone agrees that's wrong. So, just like most of these recipes from the community cookbooks this early, she doesn't say how many tarts it fills, and it doesn't say how to bake them or how long to bake them. It just says fill the tart shells and bake them. So I'm going to start out with 12, and I'm going to see what happens. These are the kind of thing that you really want to fill carefully, and you don't want to get this filling everywhere because it will stick and burn and just be a mess. So be very careful. So we filled 12 standard muffin cups. I'm going to stick these in the oven and let's see what happens.
So once again, I've come in at the end of the day and you have many things on the go, which is always fun.
So these are, well, you know what they are.
They're butter tarts.
Yes.
They're some of the ugliest butter tarts
They
I've
are.
ever seen. I don't think you...
Thank you, Julie. No,
I'm just saying that.
I completely screwed up. I knew that when I was filling them, I was overfilling them, and I'm thinking I don't remember how to. I know that you only have to go like 3/4 of the way, but I overfilled them.
Sorry,
Which is-
I'm just having one of those moments. You overfill them. I'm having these moments. I'm looking at who made them.
Mrs.
I know Mrs. George Johnson.
Do you know Mrs. George Johnson?
Oh yeah, she's you. Yeah.
Cool. Well, this is her interpretation of a butter tart. So
So other than our technical error, they look pretty good.
they do. So she doesn't say what kind of pastry to use.
Okay.
So I didn't know whether to use butter or lard.
Here, I'm gonna do a test. Let me find a knife.
Okay. So this is the test. Are they runny or are they stiff?
Ah, pretty good. So that looks pretty good. Oh, and you have currants and walnuts in there.
Against every fiber of my being, I put walnuts in.
Okay, so there's a long-standing. If those of you who aren't Canadian and don't eat these on a regular basis, there's a long-standing argument and disagreement, Canada-wide. Do you put raisins and or other things in your butter tarts? There is the no group, there is the yes group, and then there's people like me who will eat it both. It doesn't matter. I don't care. It's always good.
I'm definitely in the no group for nuts.
For nuts?
For nuts, yeah. I don't mind raisins or currants in them, and this is kind of partway between runny and stiff. I'm sorry, but this is not my favorite butter tart ever.
Okay. Is it a good butter tart though? It's not bad. It's not a bad butter tart.
Any handmade butter tart
It's a good butter
is a
tart.
good butter tart. Having said that, like pretty much anyone who lived in Toronto or still lives in Toronto, who gets in the car Friday night with their family and drives to the cottage outside of the city, we would drive past 5 or 6 places on our way to the Kawarthas that sold butter tarts, but we wouldn't stop at them because there was only one place that actually sold butter tarts.
I am not part of that culture. I have what my family makes for butter tarts. We do not have no cottage, no driving, no secret butter tart stash. But who has the best butter tarts is also one of those largely debated things here in Ontario.
Just
for
outside
sure.
the city of Toronto, there's like 4 different butter tart trails where you can drive from butter tart place to butter tart place on a tour, and they've got a map, and you go there, and so
If you don't like one, you'll find one you do like.
you'll find one you do like. So this is the second butter tart recipe that we've done on this
the
channel.
last one was a long time ago.
9 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, and that was the 5 Roses, right? 5 Roses original, I think.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But every other week from here on out until we run out of butter tart recipes, I'm going to do a different butter tart.
Okay, so then I'm going to ask, just to set us up here, because I'm curious, are you going to do strictly butter tarts, or are you going to kind of push into the other parts of butter tarts, like the
So I
the ones with like the jam and the coconut, the one that
no.
your aunt makes?
Oh no, no. What are those? Those are maid of honor tarts.
That's what they're called, maid of honor tarts.
Maid of honor
I
tarts.
couldn't remember that.
No, I'm not going to do those.
Okay.
But I may jump out and do the Bakewell tart, which is a Scottish thing.
Okay.
There's another thing called a border tart, which is a Scottish thing. Pecan tart, tarte au sucre.
Tarte au sucre, yeah.
Which apparently most people think that the daughters of the king brought to New France in the 1630s.
Huh. So that's
And that those, if you know who the daughters of the king are, anyway, they brought a bunch of recipes, which a lot of people think turned into this.
okay.
So I may touch on all of those things just to show how
Over time?
how
All right.
this came to be. So come on back, and be oversweetened with us with butter tarts. Thanks for stopping by.